Hello again. I am Orkhan Valiyev from Khazar University, Baku, Azerbaijan. I'm greetings from you, Baku. I'm gonna moderate the special panel with special title, Adoption of Warfare Instruments to the Evolving World Politics. So we have the special panelists, Mr. Sikorski from the Jakob of Paradies University was the paper, the identification of the proxy sources as instruments of cognitive warfare. Mrs. Amella from the Sources European University, the hybrid warfare and emotional strategies in multilateral diplomacy. Mr. Geri, building EU defense capabilities for energy tech, the hybrid warfare from Russia and China. Mr. Atesh Angelici from Leiden University was assessing the IDF's the strategic readiness for the tunnel warfare in Gaza. The Ms. Brătianu from Romania, nuclear deterrence, a grand old concept with a bright future. The Pandey, University of Allahabad, I think the sanction or as economic weapons, the political competition and the resilience of targeted states. Mr. Sikorski, the floor is yours. Just try to complete your presentation within 15 minutes. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much again. I hope you find this presentation interesting and useful. My topic is the identification of proxy sources as instrument of cognitive warfare. Contemporary reality, where traditional frameworks are being replaced by dynamic and hybrid phenomena, is shaped by the processes of postmodernity, post-postmodernity, and metamodernism. A key role is played by new digital technology and global communication, which transform social relationships and the ways decisions are made both at the level of individuals and broader socio-political structures. This picture is complete by the deconstruction of grand narratives, pluralism and relativism, which challenge traditional authorities and open space for alternative interpretations. At the same time, there is a growing search for new meanings, which combines critical distance with active engagement. Today, technology, culture, and our way of thinking about the world are deeply interconnected. They form a complex network that shapes our everyday lives as fluid and multidimensional. This change can also be seen in the nature of modern conflicts, which are more and more often non-kinetic. One important example is cognitive warfare, in which so-called proxy sources play a crucial role. My presentation focuses on proxy sources, intermediaries used in disinformation campaigns as part of cognitive warfare. The main research question is, how can we identify proxy sources that act as tools of cognitive warfare? The starting point for this discussion is based on four key assumptions. One, a shift in the conflict paradigm towards non-kinetic forms that influence human perception. This is what we call cognitive warfare. Two, the importance of proxy sources as tools of disinformation that hide connections to states or sponsors. Three, the use of advanced manipulation techniques and adaptive multi-channel distribution. And four, the need for an interdisciplinary approach that combines content analysis, source transparency, distribution, and network connections. In my research, I use a critical paradigm with elements of constructivism and post-positivism. This allows me to analyze narratives, media, and technology as factors that shape social and political reality. Information is not treated simply as set of facts, but as a narrative that influences people's attitudes and behaviors. This approach connects security studies, political studies, media studies, and cognitive psychology. Of course, I also see the limitations of these assumptions. For example, the difficulty of using quantitative measurements. However, this perspective makes it possible to reflect more deeply on the hidden mechanism of manipulation. In my research, I also use content and discourse analysis, case studies, analysis of secondary sources, and comparative approach and network analysis. Before starting the main part of the study, I analyze the meaning of cognitive warfare and the role of disinformation as a tool of influence. Based on this, I identified key features of proxy sources and created an initial matrix for identifying them. The research was based on 4 groups of sources: theoretical and methodological literature, reports and studies by international institutions, subject literature, empirical sources, case studies of proxy sources such as RU, Baltic, RU, and propaganda media in Ukraine. There is an ongoing debate about whether cognitive warfare is a completely new phenomenon or just a development of older forms of conflict. In the literature, it is defined as a form of attack on human cognitive processes, going beyond classical information and psychological operations. Its main goal is to change perception, information processing, and decision-making. Cognitive heuristics, the mental shortcuts people use when making decisions, play a key role in this process. Modern influence operations use advanced digital technologies along with knowledge from neuroscience and behavioral sciences. These tools allow for precise targeting and personalized messaging. Because of that, cognitive warfare is interdisciplinary and supports more complex influence strategies and than even before. Some experts see cognitive warfare as an evolution of psychological warfare, which was based on mass media and propaganda techniques. However, this new type of operation uses tools like machine learning, big data, virtual reality, making it possible to influence both individuals and large groups. Unlike psychological operations, cognitive actions are much harder to detect and attribute to specific actors. They rely on narrative manipulation, which is based on behavioral analysis and users' digital footprints. Synthetic media are also used to create such content, which further destabilizes the information infrastructure and makes defense more difficult. The biggest challenge is identifying the attacks and those responsible for them. This is where proxy sources play an important role. They act as intermediaries that hide the real origin of these messages. The term proxy has been used in academic literature for decades in different contexts. Even though this name was not always used, such intermediaries have been present since the early days of propaganda and disinformation campaigns. In a 2020 report by the US Department of State, the term described communication channels that are formally independent, but in fact spread manipulative content while allowing their sponsors to deny any connection. Because of their number and variety, they increase epistemic chaos and give more credibility to false narratives. They also often cooperate with experts who unknowingly help legitimize the message. In the literature, we can find different terms like proxy sites, proxy outlets, actors, or media. What they have in common is the ability to hide the real sources while still influencing public opinion, both domestic and international. Their effectiveness comes from their network of connections, support from intelligence services, narrative tactics, and global reach. These structures often combine digital and traditional media and create multi-channel messaging. Other strengths of proxy sources include multilingualism, regional targeting, and dynamic adaptation to changes in the information environmental. Their role becomes especially important in information isolated areas such as occupied territories in Ukraine, where these actors often replace independent media. They also use search engine optimization techniques to expand their reach and attract advertisers. The manipulation techniques they use include twist framing, changing the context, demonization, selective presentation of facts, and emotional reinforcement. They often use unverified sources such as Telegram channels, fake experts, and leaks repeated by pro-Kremlin media like RT or Sputnik. The analysis we have carried out so far allows us to point out at least a few basic features of the already identified proxy sources. Bringing these elements together in one concept helps us create an initial matrix. This matrix can be a starting point for further research and for building analytical tools to help identify such sources. It is important that this tool is used in an interdisciplinary and methodical way. We suggest following the steps below. Content analysis. This means taking a close look at the content published by suspicious actors. We need to pay attention to narrative techniques and styles of communication listed in the matrix. Sources verification. We should check how transparent the information is about the owners and sources of funding. Lack of this information may suggest hidden connections. Distribution tracking. We need to identify which platforms are used to share the content and how fast changes in distribution happen. Connection analysis. It is helpful to use network analysis tools to see if the actor has links to no disinformation network or state-sponsored sources. Adaptability check. We should observe how these sources change their strategy and content formatting in response to actions taken by regulators or criticism from individuals. Criticism or criticism from media organization. On the slide, you can see a table that shows the main features of proxy source in present 6K key criteria, such as how they hide their real sponsors, how they use emotional narratives, and how they operate across multimedia platforms. Each row explains what they do, how they do it, and how we can identify them. For example, they often change names and domains, use expert to build trust, and show signs of connections to state actors. This helps us better understand how proxy sources work in this information campaign. To sum up, the analysis of proxy sources in the context of cognitive warfare has helped to deepen our understanding of modern forms of disinformation. In the study, I pointed out the basic criteria for identification proxy sources. I should also be treated as only a part of a larger whole that required expansions with additional criteria, and finally the question is here, and here is. Thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Sikorski, for your
that's all for me.
I hope, yes, after that we will have the questions for you. So the next speaker, Dr. Bashoviq from Southeastern European University. Floor is yours, please. We can't hear you because just open your microphone, turn on your microphone, please. It's okay.
Oh, do you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. I apologize for this technical mistake. I usually, out of emotion, I'm trying to finish as soon as possible. So my name is Amella Bashoviq, and I am a PhD candidate at the Southeast European University in North Macedonia, but originally I am from Kosovo, from where I send my best regards to all of you. And I will try to be quite brief today, because this topic is quite unique, as my previous colleague did. And I will try to maintain the 10 minutes or 15 minutes of time slot. We'll be waiting for the questions or discussions afterwards. And my today's presentation has to deal with hybrid warfare and emotional strategies in multilateral diplomacy. If we take into consideration that these three elements, if we discuss, we can analyze from different perspectives, but I think that this topic is quite unique and timely, because not many scholars and academics are basically considering emotional strategies or impact of emotional strategies which are done through a hybrid warfare and which have impact on multilateral diplomacy. We know that the hybrid warfare uses basically a military approach with unconventional different approaches, but the one which basically impacts the most and is less spoken is the one of emotions. in this regard, while researching this topic, I came up to a conclusion and information why this is basically done is because all state actors and non-state actors who are using this specific approach, basically using this emotional intelligence or emotional strategies in a different manner or different responsibilities, are doing it because they want to be low profile, if I may say, or basically they don't want to be detected, and that's why they stay below the threshold, which would trigger a decisive military response, whether we are speaking from either states where we have a conflict or involvement of international organizations such as NATO, United Nations, European Union, African Union, etc. In this regard, my research focus was done basically, as I mentioned, on three different aspects. One is hybrid warfare, in which I wanted to encompass hybrid warfare in general, which is a quite old approach, cyber operation, which is delicate and not that old approach, and it's currently evolving, whether we are speaking hybrid warfare, cyber operations, etc. And then we have also disinformation campaign, or basically a campaign which is called FIMI. It's foreign information manipulation and interference. This is basically a concept or naming made by the European Union External Action Services, and it implies since 2015, which they basically take work on concerns of spreading of disinformation campaigns. Another part, when I wanted to research this topic, I took into consideration emotional intelligence, psychological warfare, and psychological operations, which are basically two quite relevant aspects in which all tactics and measures were taken in order to manipulate with brain, or basically mindset, of whether we are speaking about people, whether we are speaking about politicians, or whether we are speaking about any responsible or respective actor involved in the process, as well as cognitive, apart from psychological warfare, also cognitive warfare falls under this circumstances. And then what is quite important, how these two elements or two fields like hybrid warfare and emotional strategies do have an impact on multilateral diplomacy, whether we are speaking like multilateralism in an aspect of state to state or many states, or whether we are speaking as the international organizations who are mainly universal or regional, and they take respective actions in order to provide peaceful security and peace and security. This is the process. This at the multilateral level, this is the process when everything is discussed and negotiated. But also, even then, at this stage, there's a psychological game, or a psychological game and emotional manipulation that takes place. When I took into consideration these elements, I came up with three most important questions: is how do the hybrid threats amplify emotional dynamics within the international organizations? If I look into this question, I would say that it implies with manipulation of emotions by causing fear, by causing insecurities, by causing untrust, and this all multilateral actors as well as the international organization have to be very careful and have to consider, especially when they bring decisions at the negotiating table. The second critical question would be, how do these emotional impact the unity and functionality of multilateral frameworks? I would rather say that it actually has a very big impact, because sometimes it can make divisions and plays a significant role in functionality on multilateral frameworks, as they can basically create mistrust in the participants. And the third one is, can emotional strategies be intentionally developed to counteract any influences of hybrid warfare? I would rather answer with yes, they can be developed, and they are usually developed with intentions to create any specific outcome at the political level. So basically, when looking at this topic, we have to deeply analyze tactical level, operational level, strategic level, and then political level, especially when the big negotiations and the big discussions are ongoing before bringing respective political decision, which might impact on multilateral level and change the geopolitical landscape. Another basically issue when I took into consideration this topic is that I analyzed several case studies, and here I specified three quite interesting ones. The one is recent case study has to do with Iran-linked threats to United States political figures, and there is a group called Robert, which are basically somehow still confirmed that they are tied in Iran, even though there are different opinions on this. And this group basically claims that they have a lot of information against a lot of politicians, including Trump himself. And basically, this appears to be a hybrid campaign with cyber espionage, normal espionage, traditional espionage, and targeted doxing. Targeted doxing is basically, I don't know if you're aware, but doxing, term doxing implies to cyberbullying. So basically, they are using quite modern and low-profile means to threaten and to create an opponent to those who want to achieve political control. The second case that I wanted is basically old case, but still it's a present. It's Ukraine cyber attacks and espionage, which is basically done by Russian military intelligence units. One is GRU, which is equivalent for all the practitioners of hybrid warfare and academics. Most likely, they are known to be equivalent to the CIA. And Fancy Bear, this is a cyberbullying group that they are trying to threaten. I mean, they take all relevant cyber actions to endanger the opponent. What they did was they were intruding into Ukrainian agencies and infrastructure. They wanted to have the hybrid warfare operations, and they were dealing with disinformation campaign. And another also specific case is the Fancy Bear case. This is another also cyberbullying or cyber operations unit. They wanted to target especially NATO. Of course, that we are speaking about the Russian military intelligence. They went against NATO, against European Union agencies and European governments as well, and OSCE, as well as political parties, including those in United States elections in 2016, by leaking information, disrupting political system, by causing insecurities, fear, and division amongst all parties. Here, I don't know, we don't have much time, but also I made analysis of another 5 different cases in which hybrid and cognitive tactics are implied and had an impact of international organization and diplomatic processes, including foreign information manipulation and interference campaigns, psychological operation, narrative floodings, which is actually one of the another different approach or an inconvenient approach, which deals with overload of information and creating a lot of confusion with not knowing where the shared facts are based on. Deepfake information are undermining trust, and polarizing contents, dealing with fuel divisions between delegations, between states, and between respective parties. If we look into the challenges of multilateral diplomacy, there are different, we can categorize different, but including FEMIA psychological warfare, there are several questions when we consider the general challenges. One is creating confusion of shared understanding, and then the party that the information is spread to or the action is taking is basically coming into the confusion and asking questions, what is true over here? What can we believe? The second one is eroding the trust in neutral institutions, because nevertheless, if we have conflicts and challenges, especially people, people, not political parties, not the states or different actors, they turn and they ask who we can believe to. If we don't believe the states, then somebody neutral should be there, like a regional and universal organization. And then also it creates emotional polarization. That creates untrust, and then the actor itself, whether it's state or an organization, they say usually we must act alone, and that's why by acting alone they cannot have this best results. Emotional intelligence is quite interesting. That if we look comprehensively and generally, it becomes strategic asset, and it cannot be used only as a soft skill tool, especially because it helps negotiators at the negotiating table calm under manipulation, because there are a lot of manipulation done. They support empathetic, values-based storytelling to rebuild trust, because the trust can be triggered, untrust can be triggered very easily, but the trust to be built it takes a lot of time and action, and it also strengthens collective resilience to polarization and disinformation. However, main challenges can be looked at the different levels, but here I mentioned those comprehensive one and the key operational one. The comprehensive one, the one is that it creates a fragile consensus, information overload, emotional manipulation, which is one of the best and easy targeted tactics, reputational erosion, and asymmetry of response or delaying response.
Interruption, last 2 minutes.
Okay. Operational challenges are very operational, which creates a rapid evolution evolution and tactics. We have multilateral response when they understand how emotional intelligence becomes essential and can be manipulated. That's why they have to create, or they have to improve and strengthen coordination mechanisms in order to create resilience or to build up resilience. New diplomatic reality is based on the four different levels, but the biggest level or the highest level is that they have to be persuasive, which means they have to be more intrusive and to understand that the evolving hybrid warfare and psychological and emotional warfare is modern statecraft. And I came to a conclusion. I hope I have 1 more minute. I took only 5 key takeaways, which I don't want to discuss now, but what I wanted to say is that hybrid warfare, including the emotional manipulation or emotional strategies to multilateralism, is divided into 4 different levels, which is tactical, operational, strategical, and political. They act in order, as I mentioned, below the threshold to achieve political goals and change landscape for the benefits of the specific groups. By doing that, they basically avoid international legal frameworks, which is jus ad bellum and jus in bello. Yeah, I think that this would be it. And then I hope I'm in the right time frame, and I will be waiting for the questions and answers at the following part. Thank you very much. Best regards.
Thank you, Mrs. Bashoviq, for your presentation and your paper. I hope, yes, the audience will have the questions. So now we have the guest, Dr. Maurizio Geri, the frontal faces for me from Topçu Başov Center, Baku-based Topçu Başov Center. So Dr. Geri, floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Hi, Orkhan. Nice to see you again. Greetings to Baku. I hope you all hear me well. And I don't have a PowerPoint, so I will just present my paper. I am a European Marie Curie postdoc fellow, researcher. I'm from Italy, but I'm based between Brussels and Washington. So my paper is about the hybrid warfare, mostly in the energy sector, which is my research for the European Commission. Energy connected to technology, because obviously we are living in a coupled transition between energy and technology. So it's called Building EU Defense Capabilities for the energy and technology hybrid warfare from Russia, and in the future also from China, because we see increasingly hybrid actions from also Chinese actors. So my paper discusses how to build better defense capabilities and in order to deter, defend, but also react to these Russian and Chinese actions. The article makes at the beginning a short excursus on hybrid warfare in the energy and tech, then introduce the EU new process for common defense capabilities, in particular with the Rearm Europe and the white paper. And then it concludes with some recommendations on how to improve EU defense capability cooperation, which is the most urgent need, at least for what the scholars seems to see in the future, in the near future of European defense integration. So as an introduction, let's say that defense capabilities are assets and enabling capacities not only for the kinetic engagement, as we all know, but also for the non-kinetic part of the hybrid warfare. Someone called them create zones, sub-threshold actions, destabilization campaign, etc. So the European Union started a stronger, more resilient industrial base recently, but seems not enough, at least for this kind of hybrid warfare. As excursus on the type of hybrid warfare in the energy and technology sector by Russia and China, my paper presents the fact that Russia is obviously, as we all see, try to undermine European Union in its rearming phase. So it's evolving its hybrid warfare tactics from cyber to manipulating gas flows, from cyber on critical infrastructures to sabotage of critical infrastructures, particularly the undersea energy cables in Baltic Sea. China is also doing something similar in the Baltic Sea, sometimes with vessels, damage to gas pipeline, but is also reinforcing the dependencies of Europe on Chinese supply chain of critical raw materials and technology, making more possibility to open to weaponization of these dependencies using unethical practices or economic pressures as tools of hybrid warfare. NATO and the EU are trying to adapt quickly to these new forms. As we all know, NATO just said recently to use 5% of GDP for all the members, of which 1.5% will be on hybrid elements, including defending infrastructures. Someone speaks about also Italian transportation, for example, with the famous bridge on Sicily. We don't know if we will do it after 50 years, but that is also related with the hybrid warfare, because coming from the southern flank, there are more possible hybrid attacks. And as we all know, Italian south is cut out of the northern part because of the long distance. And so a bridge could be probably change something. But there are many new possibilities to use these funds for hybrid infrastructures and hybrid warfares. Regarding the NATO, let's say the strategic concept, more than money, let's say the strategic elements, NATO has already since 22 declared that an Article 5 could be triggered with an attack on a hybrid. But that's very difficult to say how can be triggered and when, because it's not clear the definition on hybrid attacks. And since the Hague Summit now, actually, there is a classified document that NATO has for the hybrid warfare. So it updated the hybrid warfare strategy after 10 years, and it will be interesting to get some information, at least of the part non-classified. Regarding European Union new process for common defense capabilities, as I said, there is the Rearm Europe program with a possible total budget of 800 billion loans, with an initial 150 billion EU loans. The let's say EU defense industry, we all know that lag behind in the civil military dual use technology, as Draghi report already said on EU competitiveness, and the struggle to keep the pace with US, obviously, because the US has a larger and more stable procurement budgets, as we can see even recently. And European countries has been increasing its defense spending with more than 300 billion euro in 2024, rising 30%. But again, it's not clear which part of this money will go to the hybrid defense and the capabilities and capacities needed for this hybrid defense. The white paper on European defense readiness 2030 say that we need to be ready, focus on two elements of hybrid warfare, in particular technology, quantum computing, cyber, AI, etc., and critical infrastructure protection. With more surveillance, more intelligence, and so on and so forth, but still lack a coherent strategy and clear defense capabilities cooperation for this realm of energy and technology. Regarding the recommendations that my paper does on how to improve EU defense capability cooperation, I focus on ways and means because the goal seems clear. You know, when you have a strategy, you have to have goals, ways, and means. Goals seems clear to deter, defend, and counterattack. I was recently in Florence, where there was a program of countering foreign interference, and they are speaking about active defense as an element of disempowering Russian abilities to raise hybrid attacks. And so active defense can be considered like some type of, in quotes, counterattacks. As introduction, let's say that it's important to develop procuring capabilities through multinational cooperation in order to generate economy of scales, reduce costs, and give development and resilience to the technology and energy infrastructures for the green transition. The way to improve the European defense capability cooperation, it starts first of all from development or resilience of resilient energy infrastructures. The resilience means that you need to invest faster in renewable, but also diversify energy supply, enhance the resilience of the grid, as we saw in Spain and Portugal recent situation that was not clear where was the actor, or during the NATO summit, the attacks on the train racks in Schiphol airport in Amsterdam, where I was also present, and I had to change flight. It's clear that the infrastructure are not very resilient or fast resilient to these attacks, and this is an element that could be improved for the defense. Regarding technology research and development in energy security, we need to promote research and development, obviously, and the research and technology of the new, AI, quantum, blockchain, etc. And now there are some elements. That NATO has Diana, Defense Innovation Accelerator North Atlantic. Europe has also some venture capital to support startups, but still it's a beginning. So to have economy of scale in this sector is not easy, and it has to be pushed for faster. Then joint exercise and training are also important. NATO has a Baltic-centric in the Baltic Sea, but there is no support from European Union, and one possibility will be to have a cooperation there between the EU forces and the NATO. I am also a Navy officer of Italy, and usually I do reservist 2 months in Rome for the Irini operation in front of Libya. And you know that European Union has 3 naval operations, but they are not collaborating with NATO operations, and so this can be a limit, and this could be another possibility to improve the resilience in this hybrid warfare. Then enhance intelligence sharing. This also is a problem because obviously there are some countries that are in NATO and not in EU, and vice versa, some countries that are in EU and not in NATO, and we know that there is some veto there on sharing intelligence between the two organizations that sooner or later will have to be dealt with. And then expand security on cyber and digital, which is also important because it's increasingly interconnected, our world, our digital beings and digital lives with the all the infrastructures of our societies, first of all, energy infrastructures and the technology infrastructure. So regarding finally the means to improve EU and the defense capability cooperation among the countries, there should be probably a defense planning process recent to the rapid adoption action plan that NATO got. There should be work more closely with private sector. There should be also, yes, thank you. There should be more improve in the interoperability process with the common rules of engagement. Reduce technology and defense regulations that, as we know, European Union, we are very much advanced in regulations, and probably many times this limit the development of this resilience in the capabilities, in the defense capabilities. and then develop also European Union command and control, because sooner or later Europe will have to command itself, not only wait for the NATO command that until now has been done like this. Regarding the means to improve EU defense capability and cooperation, regarding the means, as I said, EU member states spend 300 billion on defense in 2024, and more than double of that of Russia, for example, but they are divided as they don't spend them together. So the first thing for the EU will be to increase defense expenses together with the common debt, and there is still discussion there because the countries are not agreeing on that. And then it needs also to reform the so-called EU defense technology and industrial base, because since 2007 there is this ADTIB, Defense Technology Industrial Base. It's collaborative procurement, so we need to have to buy EU defense tech together, leverage collective buying power. We have to have coherent member capacities, standardization and interoperability, and then a supply chain resilience, because as I said, China is also pushing towards the supply chain resilience. Is pushing towards the supply chain dependency in order to weaponize itself. And so this is very important for Europe to diversify and to invest in its own supply chain and value chain. Also need to expand the European Defense Industrial Reinforcement through Common Procurement Act. It's called EDIRPA. For now has only 500 million euros to incentivize members to procure defense product jointly. And then there is the European Defense Industry Program that also has 1.5 billion from the EU budget of 25-27. But these are small amount of money that, you know, the EU annual budget usually is around 200 billion euros. And for security and defense operations, including Irini, Atalanta, Aspides, etc., is only 1%. Obviously, it's not sustainable, so the funds has to be moved from the cohesion funds, you know, the support of poor regions, towards defense capabilities, as I said, I repeat, in the hybrid spectrum and not only in the military spectrum. So I conclude more or less with these recommendations, and then if you have questions, we can discuss more. I will try to also send this paper to the publication of CESRAN and see how we can go from there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, Dr. Geri, thank you for your the presentation. I hope yes, the audience will have questions. Next, this panelist, the Mr. Atesh Angelici from Leiden University. Mr. Angelici, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm just gonna try to share my screen first of all. 1 second. So, can everybody see the screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my capstone research thesis, which focuses on assessing the IDF's strategic readiness for autonomous warfare campaign in Gaza. So I'm an Italian student. I'm enrolled in a Crisis and Security Management Master in Leiden University. And my research focused primarily on devising a framework to define autonomous warfare and to understand what does it mean to successfully conduct a campaign to defeat enemies in the subterranean realm. So I focused a lot on Richmond's Barak underground warfare book, and I devised my own sort of framework, which is based on 2 points. The first one is detection, which later transforms into prevention, and then neutralization. So through this framework, I analyzed the Israeli army's readiness to counter asymmetric threat posed by Hamas through the tunnels. So I'm going to dive a little bit into the historical background. After the peace treaty with Egypt in 79, the Israeli withdrew from the Sinai, and therefore commodities and individuals would start to be smuggled by regular Palestinian civilians in response to the blockades. And later in 2007, they fell into the hands of Hamas, which started to implement them in strategic warfare techniques. So they increased the flow of steel and concrete, creating a long and sophisticated network of tunnels that the IDF nicknames Gaza Metro. So I put this poster here, which is obviously military propaganda. It's from the IDS, which is basically a biased source, but it kind of gives a glimpse into the sheer size of this infrastructure and how much money, how much material went into it, and how much also Iran helped building these structures. So at that point, the IDF still thought of tunnels as economic and one-dimensional, which sort of led to the kidnapping of soldier Gilal Shalit in 2006, because they sort of undervalued the value of tunnels as a versatile instrument of guerrilla warfare. And it was only after August 2014 that Israel envisioned the tunnel as a priority threat, which required a unique strategic approach. And this was done through Operation Protective Edge. So I put this image, which is basically a screenshot of docu-post on Reuters. And it's very interesting because it sort of gives an image, a depiction of how the tunnels of Hamas are built. You can see they have electricity and communication wires. The panel walls are reinforced with steel rebar, which makes it very difficult for guided bomb units with penetrating ammunition to break them. And they're also very narrow, which is used in close quarter combat, so you can't just send a regular army. I'm going to talk a little bit about the techniques employed by the IDF. So in detection and neutralization, I wanted to talk about the BRAIN, which is this laboratory created in 2016, which includes a vast assortment of mind ranging from personnel of the Ministry of Defense, geologists, intelligence officers, physicists, and combat theory writers. And its role is sort of to scan cavities and subterranean dynamics and improving mapping techniques. So its main role is detection. Then there's the Iron Spade, which is an underground version of the Iron Dome. For those who don't know it, the Iron Dome is basically the anti-missile system of Israel. And the Iron Spade aims at detecting the digging operations. It has specific sensors and is coupled with a smart wall, which sort of brings into being a series of engineering work, part of the project Zohar Hadrom, which means glow of the south. So this barrier sort of stretches for 65 kilometers. It has three components: a 30-meter deep underground barrier, which we're going to talk about later, how it doesn't work because the tunnels built by Hamas can go as down as 70 meters. It has also a 6-meter wall and a sensory system to monitor activity. Another techniques employed by the IDF was flooding. So to sort of neutralize the effectiveness of Gaza Metro, the IDF has been injecting high flow seawater in terror tunnels built by Hamas under the Strip. It was a plan that was confirmed in January 2024, but already in 2023, seawater pumps had been built near Gaza's Al-Shati refugee camp. And the main risks are that not only it doesn't destroy Hamas tunnels, it might damage them but not neutralize them completely, but also it most certainly contaminate an aquifer lying between Gaza, Israel, and Egypt, which supplies 80% of water in Palestinian territory. So it worsens the already harrowing humanitarian crisis in Gaza. And finally, I wanted to talk about the ground incursions, which is basically going there in the tunnels physically through the army. And Israel has developed its own tunnel rats. In Vietnam, the US had these soldiers which were basically um, specialized soldiers which would go down with a flashlight and a small gun to counter the Viet Cong's tunnels in Vietnam. And the Israelis sort of developed their own tunnel rats through the Yahalom unit. Yahalom stands for diamond, and it is part of the Israeli Combat Engineering Corps, and they basically do ground incursions. They're specialized in detecting, evacuating, and destroying tunnel. And its size grew from 400 to 900 specialized soldiers after Operation Protective Edge in 2014, but it can still be implemented in a better way, and we're going to talk about this later. So the Yahalom unit is basically a merger of two subunits. One being the Samur Commando, which is dedicated to finding and destroying tunnels and hidden weapon caches, and the Yael Demolition Unit, and the other one comprises the SAP Explosive Ordnance Disposal Company. All its operations are classified, and the ground operators greatly rely on unmanned vehicles because, as we explained, the spaces are very narrow, so it's very difficult to send man force in the tunnels themselves. And they also rely on the OCET's canine unit, and they operate with the support of ultralight throwable individual robotic intelligence system, which is basically a small robot designed by a Tel Aviv company called Roboteam. So their job is basically to locate entrances, sniff out explosives, and attack armed individuals. And the last but not the least technique deployed by the Israeli army to counter the tunnels is probably the most used. It's the most deployed first line strategy, which is basically bombing. And as we have seen, most of Israel's arsenal comes from the US. They have guided bomb units, GBU-39, which can penetrate a meter of concrete, so not enough to destroy the tunnels. They have the MK-84, the GBU-28, which was a bomb that the US had developed at the end of the Gulf War, through which they hoped to kill Saddam Hussein in its bunkers, but now it's used to counter the tunnel in Palestinian territory. So my research, I did my own sort of tactical assessment. It's obvious that bombing as deployed by the Israeli Air Force faces several challenges that undermine its effectiveness because Hamas's subterranean network has been built at varying depths, some located very far underground, up to 70 meters. So locating and targeting the tunnels is a significant challenge as they're hidden within very highly populated areas, homes, schools, hospitals, and it's nested in one of the territory with the highest population densities in the world because in Gaza you have about 1,800 people per square mile. And so this bombing campaign that Israel has been conducting has not only costed a lot, about $2 billion, but also it has caused an enormous amount of indiscriminate civilian deaths and has generated a set of questions in terms of legitimacy. So in conclusion, bunker buster ammunition are ineffective for tunnels deeper than 30 meters, and Hamas tunnels have been recorded to extend down to 70 meters of depth. And even if the bomb reaches actually the tunnel, the shells won't destroy tunnel openings or vertically damage underground structure without effectually neutralizing it, because a tunnel, even if destroyed, can be reused several times. I included this very interesting quote from Emil Wiesman, which is a British-Israeli architect, which is the more efficient and destructive capacity of the Israeli Air Force has become, the deeper the resistance has had to retreat below ground. And I find this very fitting to this topic. And I also included an extract from a work of Majd Abu Amer, which is a scholar, and he offers an interesting framework to understand the Israelis' limited success in destroying and detecting tunnels in the Gaza border. The first point being that the Israeli strategy is aimed at detecting incomplete tunnels instead of operational ones, and they are unable to reach ones and detect tunnels that are under a certain depth, so they cannot work with tunnels that are under 30 meters, and therefore the iron spade, ground routers, penetrating ammunitions are basically techniques that are all ineffective. And also there's a sort of dysfunctional focus on cross-border tunnels that reach into Israeli territory, while those that are within Gaza remain completely untouched, and those are the ones that are potentially dangerous and can extend into Israeli territory. And another interesting point is linked to Gaza's structural nature itself because of the sandy soil that muffles the sound of drilling and hinders the work of sensors. So all the monitoring system are basically ineffective because of how like sandy the terrain is in Gaza. So the monitors don't pick up the sound. So just to close up this part of my research, because of the sheer scale of the subterranean network embedded in Gaza's densely built city, it is basically impossible for the IDF to prevent all ambushes and attacks carried out by the Islamic militia. And we have proof of that because in the 17th of October 2023, shortly after the attack of the 7th of October, a cross-border tunnel was discovered going undetected through all monitoring system, and it was the largest ever found, about 4 kilometers, and it could even accommodate vehicles. So Israel ultimately cannot apply a high volume destructive strategy and neutralize Hamas tunnels by bombing them, and also not only because it is illegitimate, because it causes an indiscriminate amount of civilian deaths, but also because the tunnels themselves are built to resist. So the Yahalom unit, according to my research, and the Specialized Engineering Corps, are Israel's biggest assets. Not only because they're strategically effective in rendering the tunnel usable, but also because the operations are classified and less predictable. So the biggest investments should be concerned on tier 1 units, such as the Yahalom. Another issue that I raise in my research and that I find very interesting is that there is a need for a reevaluation of Hamas' capability as a violent non-state actor. Hamas has developed a very particular intelligence system to gather information on Israeli activities. It has a forward observation and border security system called the Murabitun, which consists of armed militias observing IDF movements, so basically forward observation. And it also has been posing several problems in relations to covert operations. There's already been proved that covert operations can be exposed by Hamas operatives, such as Operation Spearhead, where numerous IDF soldiers were killed because of an ambush by the Al-Qassam brigade. So this intelligence activity grew a lot since after Hamas seized control of the Gaza Strip and became more institutionalized and sort of developed its own security apparatus based on the Military Intelligence Department, the MID, and the Governmental Internal Security Force. So the use of tunnels is also part of the counterintelligence effort. That's why it's fitting also to my research. Because Hamas uses it to evade the GUN threat, so counterintelligence posed by the Israeli army, which regularly monitors the Palestinian theater through drones. So hiding in the tunnels, they basically become invisible. And at the same time, it also is part of an intelligence effort that is more on the attack side rather than on the defense, because the intelligence efforts are always very much supported by Iran, which offered expertise in the manufacturing of drones for Hamas, and basically offers a lot of GUINT capabilities for a violent non-state actor. So yeah, this slide sort of gives an image on the.
Could you please the complete, because we ran out of time?
Yes, I'm absolutely done. I'm just wanted to say that this slide gives a glimpse into the size of the tunnels in Gaza, and I hope you found my research interesting, and I wanted to thank you so much for this opportunity. So, and I'm open for any kind of questions. So thank you so much.
Okay, the Mr. Angelici, thank you for your presentation. Now the next the panelist, Dr. Ioana Constantin-Bercean from Romania. Dr. Floor is yours.
Okay. I think you can hear me now, right?
Yes, we can see.
Okay. You can see and you can hear. Nice to see you again. So I'll try to be brief on this one. My proposal is nuclear deterrence, a grand old concept with a bright future, and it's quite timely. It's part of my main study fields, actually, Middle East and nuclear non-proliferation. But lately, as we see, we are speaking more and more about nuclear proliferation than non-proliferation. So just a few thoughts about a few takeouts on theoretical perspective, few words about second strike and what that means, and to discuss a little bit about what credibility means, and a few conclusions. So since the detonation of the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we are about 1 month away from commemoration of August 1945 bombings. Nuclear weapons have been considered to be the ultimate weapons, incomparable to any other weapon system. However, after the end of the Cold War, the understanding largely detached them from the portfolio of conventional military. As we know, Fukuyama told us that the end of history is here, and basically the nuclear issue and the nuclear discussion has pretty much been put aside. However, this paradigm has changed dramatically, particularly in the last 2 years after the invasion of Ukraine. But also, as we see what is happening, what happened recently in the Middle East, and we all know the ongoing and never-ending story about the Iranian nuclear program and all the anxieties, worldwide anxiety around it. So one of the main concerns of the research and decision makers alike has become the nuclear deterrence strategy. This old concept, we remember that we've been speaking, actually, the people of that time were speaking about it a lot during the Cold War period. And it was a nightmare for the United States and the former Soviet Union. But again, I do believe, actually, and as the reality shows, that the concept of deterrence, nuclear deterrence, have a bright future again. So this article will discuss in a wider form, extensive form, the nuclear deterrence in the 21st century, both from a sociological perspective, proposing a debate on nuclear arming behavior, and from the perspective of defensive realism, used as a justification for the renegotiation of the nuclear order. Just a brief takeout on a sociological perspective, nuclear weapons as symbols of omnipotence appear to be particularly attractive devices for some states in their aim to display power for this purpose. These states are typically those states that lost the last major power war and or have increased their power after the international order was established and the benefits were allocated. From a realist point of view, the very presence of nuclear weapons, even in small numbers in some states, for example, like Israel, India, Pakistan, or North Korea, is the best deterrence doctrine. The concept of mutual assured destruction, MAD, as we know it, second strike, credibility and rationality in deterrence are the main concept around this paper arguments is built. So right now we have 8 overt nuclear powers and 1 covert nuclear power, Israel, and few others nuclear aspirants, making the nuclear phenomenon more global than ever. New nuclear players may still emerge in the next decades in East Asia, Middle East, South Asia. We have here the estimated global nuclear warhead inventories as for 2025. These are actually ready to use. The big numbers here, 3,700, these may be put up in use in United States, Russia, and China from the nuclear triad. That meaning is from sea, land, and air. And the other small nuclear powers, as we see them here, they have basically 1 or 2 capabilities to launch them. However, we still have retired, but as we see here, 93% of the global nuclear arsenal is owned by Russia and the United States. We know that recently there has been many talks about France here with 300 warheads to assure a nuclear umbrella for Europe under the new developments of security between Europe and United States, so on and so forth. But it's actually the reality that France cannot assure any nuclear umbrella or deterrence beyond its own borders. So let's talk a bit about second strike. What means? We have this 2025 Global Trends report, which says that actually the risk of nuclear weapon use over the next 20 years, we have this risk, although remain very low, it's likely to be greater than it is today. Lessons from the past nuclear crisis are various numbers, including crisis in Asia, the proclaimed center of strategic affairs of the 21st centuries. At the moment, we live in a world where the few small states with highly destructive capabilities have acquired the ability to present strategic challenges to major nations. They benefit from the rapid spread of technology as well as from not quite responsible past or present military or dual-use international cooperation. However, confrontation among big states with widely different approaches to low stability and use of force may come back within some decades. This possibility may seem remote, but it is already visible on the horizon. This time, new domains such as space and cyberspace will be part of the battle. In some ways, this battle has already begun. In cyberspace, for example, attacks are now taking place on a daily basis in peacetime, mainly for espionage purposes, and these domains pose difficult challenges to deterrence, attribution, for example, and they require new seeking. So are the nuclear weapons, while less central, becoming more dangerous? As I said previously, this Global Trends report is saying that yes, within the next 2 decades, we might be facing a nuclear war. The idea of MAD, mutual assured destruction, is thought to be a legacy of the Second World War, the first one in which people began to take seriously the possibility that the outbreak of the world would touch an orgy of immediate, almost annihilation. Absent the reality of 60 million dead at least, it may indeed have been more difficult to think in terms of destroying the 10 largest cities in the United States and the Soviet Union. The importance of the second strike capability came from conventional warfare and was adapted to the nuclear era. It was a decisive concept, notably when the Soviets acquired the ability to strike American cities. It is often wrongly associated with the counterforce as opposed to counter-value concept, which was meant to give more options to political leaders. Actually, the first strike demands lots of counterforce weapons to destroy and harden underground silos, for example. The weapons that were protected from the first strike were not accurate enough for counterforce attacks. The second strike concept, therefore, did not rule out cities, but added a threat to military targets. Such was the explanation provided by Robert McNamara himself to a Congress statement in 1963. In planning for our second strike force, he said, we provided a capability to destroy virtually all the soft or semi-hard military targets of the Soviet Union and a large number of their fully hardened missile sites, with an additional capability in form of protected force to be employed or held in service for use against urban and industrial areas. So stability, basically what we are, it is, this dream is over. So basically we are not living any longer in the bipolar era as we did before 1990s. And the new terms, new concept of multipolarity, it's actually a nightmare for many policy decision makers, because there are, as I said earlier, many small states ready either to engage in proliferation or in different type of hybrid warfare, which might engage maybe different types of wars or instruments. Moving forward, credibility, is it a relevant concept or it's an outdated one? We can speak about second strike versus or parity, about strategic superiority and how we define that strategic superiority, because as we've seen, I'm going to link what I'm going to say now to the previous presentation. We see, for example, that Israel definitely has a strategic superiority and technologically advanced in comparison with Hamas. However, Hamas managed somehow to take by surprise on October 7 all the entire field of community of Israeli intelligence and Israeli army and so on, so forth. So we have this paradox. We have some vulnerable societies and invulnerable weapons. So defining parity was a constant problem during the Cold War, and it seems to be exactly like this nowadays. What exactly should be compared on both sides? It was tempting to look at parity from an essentially quantitative perspective, but that approach was soon understood to be mistaken. Qualitative elements related to weapon systems had to be taken into account, and there were other attributes of powers beside military ones. In the United States, for example, the numbers became less and less important as the stockpile of the Soviet nuclear arsenal grew. A survival retaliatory force was what mattered for efficient deterrence. During the strategic arm limitation talks known as SALT, the American objective was essential equivalence defined as conferring no unilateral advantage to either side. A most favorable imbalance was sought to allow political pressure or raise doubts about direct and extended deterrence. As former Secretary of Defense Harold Brown put it, essential equivalence allowed guarding against any danger that the Soviets might be seen as superior, even if the perception is not justified. Also, Henry Kissinger famously asked at a press conference in Moscow in 1974, so the question was, what in the name of God is strategic superiority? What is the significance of it politically, military, operationally, at the levels of numbers? What do we do with it? The question might have been misplaced then, as Kissinger himself recognized some years later, but it may make sense at the time when Washington seems to consider nuclear weapons as a remnant of the Cold War, while rising and a weaker nation find them increasingly relevant. So nuclear weapons are ideal weapons for aggressors because of their ability to inflict destruction and terror on vulnerable cities, and Oppenheimer saw them as weapons of aggression, of surprise, and of terror. This characteristic gave an edge to the offense. The protection of civilians has been a matter of intense and emotional debate since the inception of the nuclear age. So basically, we have these still vulnerable societies in face of these invulnerable weapons. Important questions remaining regarding of this offense-defense balance and debate in the 21st century. The problem is whether there will be or should be a shift toward defense, because as we see now, for example, in the case of Russian invasion in Ukraine and of the attack on Israeli attack on Iran, okay, debatable if it was preemptive strike, legitimate, or so on and so forth, but it was a fact. We have this new debate. So, unfortunately, this concept concerns actual matters of life and death. In the current military and political environment, it is no longer inconceivable that the war between US and Russia could break out in just few days in the event of crisis. Such a conflict might culminate with an exchange of nuclear strikes taking as long as just few hours. I'm going to conclude. So the dual nature of nuclear deterrence arises from the blurred distinction between the use of nuclear deterrence as a political tool to prevent war and the practical use of nuclear weapons as a means of warfare. After all, any deterrence is only feasible if it relies on the material basis of nuclear weapons and on the willingness to use them in accordance with military doctrine, strategy, and operational plans. Just to quickly conclude, we all know that the last treaty signed between US and Russia, New START Treaty, will expire on February 2026. And these new wars in Ukraine and between Israel and Iran, they already caused this new debate about the ongoing or maybe the prospects of proliferation regional and worldwide. So basically, we have to put on the table this nuclear deterrence issue is a guarantee or a threat to strategic stability. I want to finish with this last quote from Daniel Ellsberg. He passed away recently, actually last year. And we all know him from the famous whistleblower about the Department of Defense Pentagon plans of nuclear war with Russia. So like it or not, the language of threat and ultimatum is today. the language of diplomacy. It is for many an unfamiliar discourse, a political system in which some are making threats and others are ignoring them. The ability to coerce is a form of power, perhaps the most important form underlying calculation of the balance of power. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for the presentation. So we have left the last, the panelist speaker, the Miss Pandey from University of Allahabad. Miss Pandey, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I would just like to share my screen here. I hope you all can hear me.
Yeah.
Can see.
Okay. Thank you so much. I am Mridani Pandey from University of Allahabad. I am researching in the Indian foreign policy. I would like to start my presentation with a quote by Condoleezza Rice, who was the former US Secretary of State. When diplomacy fails and war is too dangerous, sanctions are the bridge between words and weapons. Through my paper, I'll be examining sanctions as economic weapons, focusing on how political competition influences their effectiveness or ineffectiveness, and how targeted states develop resilience mechanisms. Economic sanctions have become the diplomatic tool of choice in the 21st century. From Russia's invasion of Ukraine to Iran's nuclear program, sanctions are deployed with increasing frequency. Yet their track record of achieving stated political objectives remains mixed at most. My central argument today is that sanctions function as economic weapons in a complex political ecosystem where targeted states can leverage domestic political dynamics, international partnerships, and adaptive economic strategies to build resilience against coercive pressure. So first of all, we would like to know what are economic sanctions, as we all know that they are deliberate government actions that restrict or eliminate customary trade, financial or other relations between sanctioning and target countries. It can be easily considered that the realist thinkers have, in more than one way, justified war, because in order to understand sanctions, we need to first understand what war is. The just war theory, as explained by both ancient and modern thinkers, connotes a legitimacy to war when declared under certain circumstances and by veritable authority. Scholars like Saint Augustine, Saint Aquinas, Clausewitz, and Hugo Grotius stood for war as a vital step towards the development of superior values. Despite the contribution made by these thinkers, it has gradually come to the realization of mankind that war cannot be beneficial to any of the parties and has become sort of redundant. Therefore, in modern times, war is nothing but a dangerous distraction due to which nations go for refined alternatives, replacing military warfare with economic warfare in the form of sanctions. We can categorize sanctions into three main types. They are the comprehensive sanctions that broadly restrict economic relations, targeted or small, smart sanctions that focus on specific individuals or sectors, and secondary sanctions that penalize third parties for conducting business with target states. The logic behind sanctions appears straightforward: impose economic costs to change political behavior. Sanctioning states assume that economic pressure will either directly compel policy changes or generate domestic political pressure that forces leadership to comply. However, this linear model oversimplifies the political dynamics at play. Sanctions operate within complex domestic and international political environments, as we all know, that shape their ultimate effectiveness. So, what is this political competition framework? To understand sanctions, first of all, domestically, sanctions create winners and losers within target states. Some economic sectors suffer while others may benefit from reduced competition or import substitution opportunities. Political leaders must navigate these competing interests while maintaining legitimacy. Internationally, sanctions create a competitive dynamic between sanctioning coalitions and target states seeking alternative partnerships. This competition often determines whether sanctions achieve comprehensive economic isolation or merely redirect economic relationships. The resilience of targeted states depends heavily on their ability to manage these political competitions. Successful resistance requires maintaining domestic political cohesion while securing international alternatives to sanctioned relationships. Now I would like to talk about the mechanisms of state resilience. First is economic adaptation, which involves import substitution, development of alternative supply chains, and currency diversification. Russia's response to the post-2014 sanctions exemplifies this approach, with significant investments in domestic agricultural production and closer economic ties with China and India. Secondly, there is the political legitimacy management, which it is very crucial because leaders may frame sanctions as external aggression, rally domestic support around them, around nationalist narratives, or use sanctions as justification for authoritarian measures. This rally around the flag effect can actually strengthen rather than weaken targeted regimes. Thirdly, international coalition building, which helps targeted states break sanctioning coalitions. By offering economic incentives, exploiting geopolitical divisions, or appealing to principles of sovereignty, target states can fragment the international consensus supporting sanctions. Lastly, there is the technological and financial innovation, which enables sanction evasion. Cryptocurrency, shell companies, and complex financial instruments allow continued economic activity despite formal restrictions. North Korea's sophisticated cyber operations generate revenue while circumventing traditional financial systems. The effectiveness of these mechanisms depends on the target state's institutional capacity, obviously. It also depends on economic resources and international relationships. Authoritarian regimes often show greater resilience due to their ability to control domestic information, redistribute costs, and maintain political cohesion. In my paper, I have taken into view 3 case studies: Russia, Iran, and North Korea. Russia, since 2014, demonstrates comprehensive adaptation. Despite successive sanction rounds, Russia maintained economic stability through currency controls, import substitution, and pivot towards Asian markets. Political support for Putin actually increased initially, suggesting sanctions strengthened rather than weakened the regime domestically. Then there is Iran. Iran's nuclear sanctions show how technological innovation and regional partnerships can sustain sanctioned economies. Despite severe financial restrictions, Iran developed alternative payment systems, expanded trade with neighboring countries, and maintained oil exports through various circumvention mechanisms. Lastly, North Korea. It represents extreme resilience through autarky and illicit networks. Despite being perhaps the most sanctioned state globally, North Korea maintains regime stability through strict domestic control, limited economic engagement, and sophisticated sanction evasion networks. These cases reveal that sanctions often fail to achieve their stated objectives because they underestimate targeted states' adaptive capacity and the political resources available for resistance. So, what I would like to conclude through my paper is that first, sanctions effectiveness depends heavily on the political context in which they operate. Target states with strong institutions, international partnerships, and domestic legitimacy show greater resilience. Secondly, the assumption that economic pressure automatically translates to political pressure is questionable because and is often flawed because sanctions may actually strengthen targeted regimes by providing nationalist rallying points and justifications for authoritarian measures. Third and last, the international system's multipolar nature provides targeted states with alternative partnerships that can offset sanctions' economic impact. So for policymakers, this suggests that sanctions work best as part of broader strategies that address political as well as economic dimensions. Sanctioning states must consider target states' adaptive capacity and work to maintain broad international coalitions while offering credible incentives for compliance. The resilience of targeted states demonstrates that economic weapons, like military ones, face determined opponents who adapt and resist. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for developing more effective coercive strategies in an increasingly complex international system. Thank you so much. That will be all from my side.
The Ms. Pandey, thank you for your presentation. So we have listened at the different the perspectives in terms of the warfare to the evolving world politics. So I would like to express my gratitude to all the panelists. And the Mr. Sikorski have left our discussion because he mentioned that is the program anyway. So time for questions and discussion. If you have just question, just raise your hand or just turn on your microphone and start your question.
I have a question. Hello.
Oh, go ahead, please. Apologies.
Okay, I have a question for Atesh. For the IDF, very interesting presentation. My guess is that all the data you collected are from open source or SIN, so basically are available for pretty much anyone. And it's more a curiosity. Why do you think IDF and the intelligence community failed to prevent the 7 October attack if they all knew about the tunnels and about the funding of Hamas and everything was actually there most of the time aware what happened there? So basically you offered us such a comprehensive presentation of their strategy and tunnels and military undergrounds and everything. Which do you believe is the main cause of the intelligence failure to prevent this, or for the IDF or the rest of the Israeli forces to prevent that attack? It was kind of 9/11. This is how it's presented actually in worldwide.
So thank you for the question, first of all. My guess is that although, of course, we don't have an objective answer to this because we can't know exactly what intelligence failure has been done to overlook such a massive event, because it was about 3,000 soldiers, 3,000 militants that arrived through paragliders, quads, air, ground, so even through the sea. So it was a massive operations that the Mossad and the Shin Bet couldn't have overlooked. My guess is that there was a mistake in terms of data collection. So basically, not only data collection, but analysis most of all. So basically, they knew that the militants were there. They knew that the militants would arrive at a certain point, but they just were used to other events in which the militants would be there at the same time or would regroup in that time, and just overlook the fact that they might actually attack. So it was an intelligence failure based on habits. So the Israelis have the habits of having a very an enemy at very close proximity. So the operations that they might conduct might be very close to Israel, might showcase in some way the proximity of an attack, and they just overlooked that possibility. That's my guess, and obviously I don't have an objective answer. I would need to talk to someone who works in that sector to be able
none of us
to.
have, but I like your syntax about failure of habits. I think you should develop on this one, because actually it's very interesting, and I do believe that it might be pretty much that. Their use rockets, launches, and maybe small attack. But as you said, it was a three-way attack by land, sea, and air. and it looks like it was a very well-organized attack and developed not in 1 month, 1 week, maybe at least 1 year prior to that. It was the strategy was put in place. Thank you very much. I even noted this, a failure of habits. I really like it. And best of luck with your research and keep doing
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the discussion. As you mentioned, yes, Mr. Atesh, the paper is somehow just comprehensive and interesting. They wish you all the best, and I hope that you're going to publish as soon as possible. So, any questions?
If you don't mind, I have the last one. That
Please.
makes me a very good listener, you see, at least this. For our colleague, Mr. Maurizio Geri, if he's still available. I know some of them left.
I think he's here, yes, with us.
Okay.
Geri with us, because
I don't know if he's here, but if he's not here, it's okay. Maybe next time. Maybe he left for a coffee. Anyway, I was curious because you're speaking about integrating new defense system into European Union. So this defense project strategy, and I was curious how he sees it as within or out of NATO framework. Because we are speaking nowadays about percentage allocated to defense, and it's 5%, and for some countries it's quite huge, and basically I was curious how he sees it, if that 5% would cover also the European integration defense, or it would be outside of NATO, and how he sees the future. But it's for, maybe we meet next year.
Yeah, it seems that yes, we don't have, the audience doesn't have further question. So it was the last the session in terms of the CESRAN2025. I would like to express my gratitude to all the panelists, including Dr. Sikorski, Mrs. Bashoviq, Dr. Geri, Mr. Atesh Angelici from Leiden University, Dr. Ioana Constantin-Bercean, and Mrs. Pandey from University of Allahabad, and also we gratitude to CESRAN International for this organization conference. So I hope yes, next year we will be able to meet for in-person engagement in new place. So it was my pleasure to. Mr. Geri is here. Maybe it's just for your question, Dr. Ioana, because it was an interesting question. So before that, you can ask your question.
Hello. Yes.
Hello. I was posing a question for you, but I thought you left for a coffee. So congratulations for your presentation and for your work. Best of luck with it. You're speaking about this process of integrating European defense. So basically, of course, we are speaking more about it after the Russian invasion, but some people are seeing it as maybe a cover-up for federalization, European federalization, but maybe this is another story. My question is how you see this process of integrating European defense within or out of NATO framework, because as you know, the last NATO summit in Hague, there are talks about the 5% allocated to the defense for each country. It's quite a huge amount of the internal the PIB. So basically, do you see it as a different strategy or different project, or to be somehow, and if how, integrated within the NATO project? Because actually the NATO already has all the capabilities and all the infrastructure, if you will. So basically, if EU wants to build a new defense project or strategy, they have to build everything from scratch. And if they do it, they will do it within or outside of NATO.
Yeah, that's the whole point here. So my research is about EU. defense capability cooperation, because EU, the idea is that they want to build and pay together for the capabilities. NATO is not doing together. NATO is doing every country by itself. But NATO has the command, while European Union has no command of operations. If some attack happen in Europe, NATO has the command, because the representative of the EU of the NATO command here is American in Mons.
Always, since
So
Eisenhower.
the point of making here is this: we are in a process of integration after the periphery of sovereignty, which was economy and politics. Now we are going to the core of sovereignty, which is defense, because the monopoly of force is the core of nation-state sovereignty. And will gradually create the so-called European Defense Union, or whatever you want to call it, that will be one of the pillars of NATO that will continue as an alliance between US, UK, EU, Turkey, and Canada. So this will be the four main. Probably NATO could also transform itself as the European Union is transforming in some type of European Defense Union gradually, as I said, with the common procurement, common production, etc., common command, etc., etc. Also, NATO can expand, because the situation of the world is different than after World War II, to a global alliance of democracies, because NATO is a political military alliance. Before, it's a political alliance of democracies. So this means that the Eastern Asian countries that every time since a few years come to the NATO summit, meaning New Zealand, Australia, Japan, etc., South Korea, they could also decide to join some type of, instead of North Atlantic, let's say global treaty organization for democracy, or the Pacific treaty organizations like the AUKUS also agreement that is happening. So there will be, like, I think, two different organizations, because, as Weber tell us, bureaucracies self-sustain themselves, self-reproduce themselves. So European Union will keep continuing in its integration, in its internal integration as the core of defense, the core of sovereignty. NATO will continue to exist because a defense alliance between different, countries, but also regions of the world, which is North America and Europe, and maybe expand to other regions. So my research is about this paper is about the cooperation inside the EU, and so capability inside the EU, and it will happen in a way or in another, either forced by Trump or other administration, or naturally, because of the natural, integration of the core after the periphery. Yes.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Yes, thank you.
So, any question or further remarks? Okay, it's time to complete. So we would like to thank the CESRAN International for this organization. And as I mentioned before, I hope, yes, we will be able to meet in person in 2026 in somewhere within EU. So wish you all the best for your future endeavors, and see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Bye bye. Thank you.